Anubis and the murder of the girl Sari while Sari was in the library. The advisor Anubis finally planned to kill her because he did not want any humans in the kingdom. However, what if the king learned about the matter, and what were the past events between the king and the advisor Anubis and the great sacrifice that occurred? And how was his father killed? We will present all these matters. Follow the episode until the end. The episode begins with the king gathering his men in the meeting hall, discussing Sari when she relinquished her role as queen. The king was not convinced by any of this and blamed the advisor for misleading her. Sari, who said herself at last night's party that she was not qualified to be a queen, meaning she had given up her test, was considered to have withdrawn from royalty at that moment. However, Sari completed her duties as a hostess and won the admiration of Duke Galwa. The advisor insists adamantly on not acknowledging that the test was successful. At night, the king enters angrily to find Sari in the library, engrossed in books. She asks him what happened to him, and he tells her that he is a bit tired of criticism. Sari understands that he is talking about her again. The king reassures her that there is no need to worry, but he wants to tell her the truth, as she may regret her actions if he tells her. He does not want to impose further restrictions on her unnecessarily. Sari sits next to him, eager to hear what happened. The next day, Sari sits in the library searching for books on Achaemenid history and discovers that a part is missing. It must have been mixed up with another library, as this is not the only book available here. There is enough to cover the entire history of Ozmargo. She also learns that there is a forbidden library, accessible only to those of royal status. When Sari learns all this, she becomes very excited because she will be able to enter the forbidden library. Club, who is straightforward with her, tells her that the word forbidden means she is not allowed to enter, but he will find the next volume of the book for her. She just has to wait there. She tells him she doesn't want to trouble him and she will find it herself, as she always makes them do all the work. Sari then leaves to check the nearest library first, as she doesn't know its location, but she will search for it until she finds it. Afterwards, we see the advisor shouting at the security guards, who are laughing and not focused on their work. They apologize to him in fear, but he warns them that there is no place in this palace for any insincere servants to His Majesty the King. They must remember that they can always be replaced. He then leaves them to continue their work, and they are very afraid of him because he has become more powerful lately. However, they understand his feelings after witnessing that party, realizing that not all humans are bad. From behind, the advisor eavesdrops on them, realizing that they are both fools who don't see that it's just a performance and nothing more. She deceived the king to escape from sacrificing herself and save her own life. But she can't deceive the advisor, so he decides to remove her from the king's side by any means possible. At that moment, Sari appears before him directly, welcoming him and offering to take him to the library. The advisor feels sorry for her because she led him to the library, even though he is busy. Inside the library, Sari is unaware of the book she is looking for among all the books, frustrating the advisor. He doesn't know how she managed to deceive the king, but he is determined to end her life forever. Suddenly, an idea comes to him. He could kill her now before she leaves. He could easily arrange an accident amidst all the shelves, as no one would suspect them being there. Sari never suspected that he would do such a thing and continues searching for books with confidence. When she reaches out her hand, several books fall on top of her head. She apologizes and says she will continue searching on her own, but he refuses. He wants to help her. She tells him that she honestly wanted to solve this problem on her own, but there is no reason for her to worry with him by her side. The advisor is shocked by her reaction, considering her foolishness and lack of sense of danger. He decides to end her quickly, using the same hands he swore to dedicate to the king. Suddenly, the advisor loses consciousness, and Sari keeps calling out to him, but he doesn't respond. Then we see the advisor as a child, and the maid tells him it's time to dress for his father's funeral because it's about to begin. The advisor refuses, as he doesn't want to go anywhere. The maid informs him that in this funeral, he will officially inherit the name of Anubis. We realize that the child's problem is that he doesn't want to become a servant of the royal family. The Anubis family has served and protected the royal family for generations. Their blood and lives are dedicated to being sacrificed for the king one day. The advisor's father often talked to him about this, which is why he refuses after his father's death, even though he continues to save the king from assassins. But his death didn't have much impact on the royal family, considering him just one servant lost. Then we see the older king confronting Anubis' son when he hears that he didn't attend his father's funeral. The child tells him that his father was sick, which is why he couldn't come. The king doesn't care and expects the child to fulfill his duties anyway. From now on, he orders him to serve the young prince. The young advisor agrees, happy to get to know the prince and the king's son. As they spend time together, the young advisor decides to study hard to become the greatest in the kingdom, even more important than the royal family. To achieve that, he is willing to do anything. While Anubis is walking in the royal palace, the young king stops him because there is a group of ants walking, and he fears for their safety, not wanting them to die. Anubis tells him that these ants with 100 eyes don't fear death and that even if 1 or 2 of them die, it doesn't mean their extinction. Anubis informed them that the ant with 100 eyes does not fear death, and even if 1 or 2 of them die, it does not mean their extinction. They also lack intelligence to mourn their deceased friends. Our great concern for them poses the real threat to our ecosystem. The young king was surprised because Anubis' son is actually intelligent, so why would he trample on them even though he could avoid them and leave them be? The next day, Anubis' son spoke with the young king, as it was time for a sword duel. But the king told him that he hates swords and has no interest in them at all. In response, Anubis' son told him that it is obligatory because someday he will lead the forces into battle himself, so he shouldn't be afraid. It's just a wooden sword, and getting hit with it is not painful like a real sword. Anubis' son assured the king not to worry when he assumes the throne because in the case of an attack and the country facing occupation, he would be the last to die as his followers would sacrifice themselves first. The young king took the sword and told him that when he ascends to power, he doesn't want even a drop of bloodshed. He wants to spread peace throughout the world. But Anubis' son was not convinced by his words. Then the king started training in sword fighting, while Anubis' son stood and watched, wanting to reach the pinnacle of the kingdom one day. One day, Anubis' son fell seriously ill and was bedridden. However, he wanted to get up again because he loved studying and learning. For him, it was a matter of life or death as he wanted to become significant in society. Some maids were talking about him, saying he was too weak and couldn't assume the throne after his father Anubis. The son heard their words, and he was very sad because he didn't want to be a follower of the royal family and didn't want to follow in his late father's footsteps. Then the son talked about his father, how his father never visited him even once when he was sick. While remembering this incident and crying, the young king came to him, knowing that he had a high fever and was bedridden. The king had heard from the servants that he was sick, so he came to visit him. He also brought some healthy food from the royal kitchen. Anubis' son was surprised that the king did all this for him. However, the young king told him that he loves him very much and worries about him. Anubis' son was astonished because from his perspective, the royal family never looked at anyone with compassion and sympathy. They only loved themselves. The young king informed him that Anubis saved his life, and he wants to repay that kindness. When Anubis' son learned this, he became very angry and told the king that he doesn't want to eat from anyone and that he should go away and leave the room. Suddenly, something strange happened. A mysterious person entered the room and kidnapped the young king and Anubis' son. It was a very dangerous situation. The king and the young prince were kidnapped by these foolish individuals, who planned to ransom the king for money and then kill him. This time, we must put an end to it and kill them. This means they targeted the king before and killed Anubis. Then the monster raised his sword and wanted to decapitate the king because he is worthless and they won't benefit from him, unlike the king's son. Sirius is severely injured and surprised to see a royal figure protecting a subordinate, then abusing the other monster because it injured the king. He realizes that the other child is the one he should kill, and the prince stands up to defend Sirius. Sirius is astonished by this and informs the prince to stop it, as the future king should not put himself in danger. The prince tells him that the king is someone who protects everyone, and if he can't even protect a single friend, then what kind of king is he? Suddenly, the prince explodes with anger, releasing immense energy that overwhelms the two monsters. Afterward, the prince loses consciousness, and Anubis becomes extremely worried about him. Anubis reassures the prince that he is fine, and the prince is relieved. Meanwhile, Sirius's eyes fill with tears, and he bites the prince to escape and prevent them from being harmed again before the two monsters awaken once more. Sirius resolves to protect the king with all his strength, and suddenly, the king's soldiers sense magic and see the Lord Anubis' son with him. Sirius reassures them and urges them to hurry and bring the prince to him. Later, in the palace, a servant informs Sirius that the prince will recover in a few days with rest. Sirius is pleased that he is unharmed and heard that the prince begged His Majesty the king not to hold him responsible for what happened. Sirius reassures himself, saying that the prince only thought of himself during the attack, but the prince took care of the matter and made it clear to himself for Sirius's sake. Finally, Sirius realizes that his father must be watching him from somewhere, and he has found his own king. Sirius then goes to the king to check on him and apologizes for his inability to defend him that day, even though he serves him. The future king tells Sirius not to worry and apologizes for involving him in the first place. Sirius interrupts him, saying that members of the royal family should not apologize casually or put themselves in danger to protect others as he did on that occasion. He considers it a reckless and impulsive act and asks the prince to be more careful in the future. The prince is surprised by Sirius's words and raises his head, telling him that as Anubis, he will dedicate his entire existence to the prince's well-being and do anything to make him a powerful, strict, and absolute king, no matter the cost. Now, returning to reality, Anubis wakes up and imagines the young prince in front of him, causing him to startle. Anubis tells him that she was very worried and had been waiting for him to wake up. Anubis becomes annoyed that he saw His Majesty the king in this mischievous girl and starts UT in the last moment. The young king defended him and took the blow in his place. She tells him the meaning of all this and what happened. Lady Sari informs him that he suddenly collapsed in the library, but he seems fine now. She tries to touch him, but Anubis suddenly strikes her on the face and tells her not to touch him or imagine that it will make him indebted to her. He accuses her of deceiving everyone to ensure her own survival, calling the human race contemptible. He believes that she may have deceived the king with her tricks, but she will never deceive him. He expresses his anger towards her, and she tells him with a smile that she felt relieved because he finally acted true to his nature. She refers to when she addressed her as Lady Sari earlier, which was strange. In addition, she mentions that His Majesty the king also worries about him. This infuriates him further, and he warns her not to behave as if she knows anything about His Majesty the king. She would need 1,000 years to speak on his behalf, as she knows nothing about what transpired between them. She claims not to know, but she understands what he holds dear, even if it doesn't show on his face. He worries about the advisor greatly and asks her to recover quickly and think about her next test. Then she leaves the room and suddenly finds the king heading towards Anubis to check on him. The king gathers his advisors and they ask for permission to open the council regarding Lady Sari, whom they recently discussed. Anubis, in this instance, suggests that they respect the royal administration and consider her to have passed the test. The king is extremely surprised by Anubis and informs the advisors that he is convinced by his words. The council concludes, and afterwards, Anubis looks at Lady Sari, saying to himself that from now on, he will judge her seriously to see if she deserves the king's heart. She must prepare herself for that. And thus, the 9th episode ends. Stay tuned for the next episode with exciting events, but don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell to receive all the latest updates.
制裁？
はい。席を。